What's up, everyone? Kevin Carrillo here, and welcome to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast. My guests today are Mack Lewis, Colin McCaleb, and Peter Lepak of Headie Horticulture. The gentlemen of Headie Horticulture. What's going on, guys?
Hey, Kevin. Not much, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. I got a lot going on this week. We recorded a number of podcasts and in the process of moving, which is pretty stressful, but we're almost in the clear. So all is good, man. And then trying to keep our social distance and follow all the regulations that are going on here in Texas. How are you doing? What's going on with you?
Hey, Kevin, I'm doing well, man. Thanks again for having us on today. And things are going well. I'm in Boulder, Colorado, so our quarantine is not too bad here. Our governor's been on top of it through this whole process, and we don't have too many cases here. It's starting to grow a little bit, but it's been all right. So
that's good. And for those of you just listening, that was Colin McCaleb, the Director of Operations and Supply Chain Management. So
Yeah,
indeed,
so,
thanks, man.
Yeah.
I'm in Florida. It's a little bit of a hot spot here right now, and I'm gonna be making my way up to the Northeast, up to Rhode Island to see Trapper here, our Director of Finance. But yeah, man, staying social distancing. At least I'm on the beach, so I can go out and hang out and stay away from people. So it's a tough time for everyone, but at the same time, there's a lot of progression happening, especially in the cannabis industry here. Just from simply communications opening up dramatically because you have to survive, right?
Right. Yeah. A lot of people are adapting to this new digital life, right? Because obviously you can't be going in person to conventions or conferences. So we're finding a way to continue the education and the growth within the industry. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And it gave us a chance to, be able to get anybody on the phone anytime. Everyone is bored and sitting at home. And we found that it gave us a lot of opportunities to do business development with all of our, clients and potential clients. So we've been doing okay so far with it.
That's good. That's good. So, and we had Mack Lewis, the president and founder, talking about Florida. That was who's previously speaking. And then we also have Peter Lepak on the phone. Peter, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Hey, Kevin. Yeah, I'm the director of finance for Headie Horticulture. I've known Mack since we were 10 years old. I'm located, usually Boston, Massachusetts, but because of COVID, I'm hiding out in Newport, Rhode Island right now. I have a family farm down here that's close to the beach, so it's easier to get out of the city and kind of lay low. It's pretty nice. I have a background in real estate development, doing a little bit of private equity and investment analytics, with that game in Boston. So when Mack asked me to kind of hop on back in January, I couldn't say no. It was a firm yes, and I've been translating my skill set ever since.
That's awesome. And so you guys go way back then, right? And that's, I think, how I was formally introduced to Mack was through Brian Cheeseman. Shout out to Brian. So you guys are just friends from childhood. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Let's see. Me and Trap were building forts in the the fifth grade, planning new as a teacher, right? So now we're planning on taking over the world one day at a time, right? So it's just been a slow progression of knowledge and wisdom and learning from our mistakes, right? That's led us to where we're at. And then Colin here, I went to college with Colin. We've known each other for 15 years.
Yeah, so it's kind of how it's been with the whole team. It's funny, we only one of our primary directors is somewhat new to the group. Our director of regulatory affairs, Zach Lockwood, who's not on the with us today, but he's also went to college with Mack and I in Boulder at University of Colorado 15 years ago. Crazy.
The vetting process at Headie Horticulture is like a frat. You guys know each other so
right. They always say you're not supposed to work with your friends, but we clearly don't believe that.
You got to a point, Kevin, if I can just kind of lead into who we are and what we're doing, so it kind of makes sense to everyone here. It got to a point in January where I was, ready to launch our own international firm, and I essentially called my best friends. I was like, "Hey guys, this is what's going on. The network exists. Let's combine networks and put the paperwork together to protect the network. And that's kind of the evolution of the business that's taking place. So everyone's really been able to do what they're best at, what they're natural at, right? And we've been able to thrive dramatically. It's a beautiful thing. You know, every day we're having amazing conversations with amazing people, right, that are bringing about enlightenment to both ourselves and to them, hopefully. And it's a really good thing to be a part of. You know, it feels good. We laugh a whole lot, which it makes every single day better. Right.
Yeah, and you know, it only made sense for Mac and I. You know, we really came up together in the cannabis industry here in, you know, the Denver area. So we were already, you know, learning a lot of this stuff, you know, a decade ago, and only made sense for us to, you know, team up here and really see what we can do to bring our knowledge and help, you know, help people around the world with, you know, launching their cannabis dreams. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I've always said that the most important thing when starting a business is human capital, right? It's the people that you have leading in a particular position, or, you know, a team that you're working together with, and the fact that you guys go back so far and already have established that trust and you know, and that relationship, it's great, you know. So sky's the limit for you guys at this point.
Absolutely.
So,
Before we get too far into it, I'll give my quick intro. Trap did his there. Just so everybody knows, we call Peter Trapper. He goes way back. His parents were calling him that as a kid. So we you know, we know a lot of Peters we work with. So he goes by Trap when we're talking together. But yeah. So my background, like I said, with Mac, you know, first of all, I was born and raised in Boulder, so I'm still here. I've been in the cannabis industry about 15 years here. You know, pretty much since when medical started really opening up and dispensaries started opening around 2009. And, you know, my main background is in cultivation. I've been doing cultivation consulting for the last decade. I specialize in a recirculating deep water culture hydroponic system, and really focus on maximizing efficiency and focusing on automation. Lately, I've kind of shifted my focus more towards sales and marketing and the supply chain side of things. You know, it's the role I've taken on with Headie, and you know, Mac and I are resident cannabis experts. We brought together the rest of the team with, you know, finance and business development, regulatory affairs. So we built a pretty diverse skill set within our group.
That's great. That's great. And thank you for that introduction, Colin. I appreciate it. Especially, I know that the listeners that are not watching this appreciate it. So let's get right into it. Mac, I mean, why don't you explain, you know, what Headie Horticulture is and what y'all's mission is for the industry?
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. Thank you for the opportunity, man. So, you know, I've been cultivating since the dawn of legality in Colorado in 2006 when Amendment 64 hit, right? Jumped right into it and actually helped broker one of the first legal cannabis gardens there with Boulder County Caregivers was the name of the dispensary, the first dispensary in Boulder, Colorado. So that kind of led me right into the opportunity to get into commercial cannabis commerce. And built out 8 different gardens in Colorado, or at least played integral roles in those build outs before relocating to the West Coast, up into Washington and down into Oregon. And then was relocated out to Panama City, Panama, where I got to go work for an international cannabis technologies, risk management, and regulatory consulting firm. And I was there for about 20 months and actually just came up to Florida a few weeks ago. Because the quarantine there was insane. They had me locked down. I was allowed to leave my house 2 hours on Tuesdays and Thursdays. That's it.
Oh,
yeah, the streets were police, so it wasn't that much fun. But you know, that led to a point where in January, my network and the others here, we started to outgrow really who I was working with at that time. So we launched Headie Horticulture. Right, and Headie Horticulture really focuses on reverse engineering the supply chain. With eloquence, I guess is the best way to put it, right? We're filling the void, we're filling the gaps, right? Where a lot of people in the industry or companies we're seeing have struggle and fail. One is the input to market, right? And the input is being able to raise money for the right type of projects. And that's where Trapper's Network has done amazing things. He's been able to build quite a strong financing arm in a very, very short period of time that gives us the opportunity to, you know, go out and find the right people to invest in and help accelerate the industry in the right areas. We also focus on the throughput to market, right? And the throughput really is involved with, cultivation, extraction, and final product manufacturing. And so building these final product manufacturing facilities around the world has given us the ability to turn bulk raw material into consumer-ready end products that's much needed. Come on, bitch, you're ruining my monologue.
I have 3 dogs of my own, so I get it, man. I have to close the door. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So and then distribution, right? The offtakes, right? We're really focused on that. So what we're doing at this point in time in our career is building our portfolio of companies and organization and partners that we're closely working with to really lock down supply chain integrity. It's about integrity. There's a lot of hooligans in the industry, right? And our goal is to really kind of weed those people out of our network, which we've done a really good job at so far, and find out who's real, who can put their money where their mouth is, and who can actually execute. Right, it comes down to execution. So that's our main focus and it's been amazing progress so far, and especially during COVID. Like I said, everyone, or like Colin said, everyone wants to get on the phone and chat with us nowadays, and it's a pretty cool thing to be a part of. So that's it in a nutshell. I want to let the other guys kind of talk about how they see the business forming and where we're at. Buck or Trap, if you want to take it away, brothers. Oh, you're on mute, Colin.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, so I think we've really just been trying to tie together all the knowledge that we've accumulated here over the years, and we've seen such drastic shifts in the cannabis industry, especially I feel like over the last 2-3 years. As more states in the U.S. open up with with more lax regulatory frameworks, then with the USDA Farm Bill, going into effect in 2018 and really opening up the hemp farming side of it. It's been pretty crazy to see, and especially, a lot of what I'm dealing with the supply chain side, just seeing how much prices have fluctuated. Looking at, on the hemp side of things, CBD isolates or really any type of, cannabinoid isolate, they were selling for astronomical prices 9 months ago. And because of all the hemp farmers that, started up this past year, transitioned their old crops into hemp, and just seeing how the prices have tanked and really, seeing how that's affecting how people are doing business. It's been very interesting here in Denver, and just kind of being able to track it all over the last year has been crazy. Then we throw COVID into the mix, and it's just been a whole other ballgame.
Right. And I know, and Mack, he mentioned the gaps in the supply chain. So what would you say, what are some of the more common gaps that you're seeing when it comes to supply chain management and in that process?
Well, I'd say, a lot of it is especially when you're looking from inception to consumption with, starting at the farmers and really seeing the lack of successful extraction facilities. There start to be a lot more open, but a lot of these farmers jumped into this, and they really didn't have an idea where they're going to sell all their biomass or their smokable flower, whatever they may have been doing. So that kind of ties into what Max was talking about with, we really focus on trying to find offtakes for people and figure out, make sure they have a place to put their products before they actually start their whole project. So that's been a big part of it. It started to open up. I'm lucky here in Denver. We don't have as much of a problem with that. There are quite a few labs, but nationwide, it's become quite a problem, especially if you're looking into some of these states, North Carolina, Tennessee, where it's really starting to open up and there's a lot more people growing. That's been one of the biggest ones. Also, there's just a huge problem with really poor quality products on the market, especially on the CBD side. There's so many out there, and so many of them are just completely ineffective and give people a really, really bad taste in their mouth when they try it, because they don't actually get any effect from it. So we really focus on trying to make sure that people are getting really high quality products. They're going to benefit them medically, physically, mentally. And that's a lot of what we're doing is distributing those types of products as well. So
yeah, and I totally agree with you when it comes to the quality of the product. There's so much out there that, you'll get gummies that have more sugar than it does actual CBD content,
Yep.
Right?
There's studies showing, across the states where they're pulling CBD products off of shelves, and 90% of them aren't even testing at what they're claiming to be on the package, right? And so, just to touch on a little bit there of what Colin was talking about with infrastructure in place for all the hemp that's being produced, 80% of the biomass produced in 2019 in the United States went to waste or is still sitting and rotting or is still sitting and being sold at dirt cheap. I mean, farmers are letting go of this product now at below, their cost of goods to sell and just to get some cash flow in the door. And it comes down to the fact that the infrastructure isn't in place for this product to be processed. Right. And so we're really kind of helping and focusing people on their attention and kind of made to order seed planting, right? That seed goes in the ground knowing that the product that's coming off of that plant has a final product manufacturing facility to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that's really important. That's where a lot of farmers have failed. And then the quality that comes along with that. I like to kind of use the phrase molecular dynamics, which I know is a little bit high level, but at the same time, if you in simpler form, it's really breaking down, the 113 cannabinoids and the thousands of terpenes and the flavonoids that all exist within the plant and being able to reintegrate them an API-based formulation where we can actually study independent variables, right, in clinical trials and know what these molecules are actually doing to the human endocannabinoid system.
And what findings have you seen thus far in your studies?
Oh, we're seeing amazing results all over the world. CBG particularly, right? Cannabidiol is the mother of all cannabinoids. All cannabinoids start as CBG and eventually mature into their final state and form. It's got great anti-cancer properties, which we're seeing proven results. Or anti-cancer is not the right word, but cancer fighting, anti-inflammatory, anti-anxiety, right?
Yeah, it reduces cancer cell growth, is what I've heard.
Absolutely. There's many studies that are showing that.
Yeah, it's breaking down the barrier around red blood cells, or at least it's weakening that barrier by which cancer forms to allow T cells to re-enter. So in a way, it's I guess the cannabinoids aren't the cure. They allow the body to cure itself, I guess, is the best way I can put it.
They aid in that. And so Kevin, we've really focused on using all of these other cannabinoids a lot more. Everybody focuses on THC and CBD, but with all of our final products that we're manufacturing, tinctures and topicals, we add special cannabinoid blends into everything. So we use CBG in almost all of our products. We really are firmly believe in CBN. That's been the one we've had incredible results with all kinds of clinical trials with. I mean, not necessarily clinical trials, but with our customers using them, we just get incredible feedback. It does wonders for anxiety, insomnia. It's pretty incredible. We just have started really playing with this over the last few months. That's quickly become one of our best selling products.
Yeah, I had a geneticist on, Adam Jocks, who is basically like one of the godfathers of a lot of the CBD products that we're seeing today. And he was saying, and I think you're talking about it when you're mentioning how you're mixing these cannabinoids into various products, and you really want that full spectrum effect, right?
Absolutely.
The entourage effect, right? So terpenes, for example, right? What make flowers or what make anything kind of smell. Flavonoids make them taste, right? There's a reason you walk into the massage parlor and it smells the way it does. There's a reason you light a candle by your bathtub, and it's because when you intake that molecule or that smell, you're actually releasing serotonin, right? That's hitting your GABA receptors, right? And so that coupled with cannabinoids and flavonoids allows electrical currents to flow at particular rates that will give you that sense of well-being or of health or of happiness or relaxation, whatever it may be that you're trying to find. And that's kind of the science behind it in a high level. And the beautiful part about where the cannabis industry sits right now is there's real scientific studies now taking place that are showing the proof in the pudding for all of these kind of claimed to be assumptions for the past 20, 30 years. We could see real science.
Absolutely, Mac. Now we can actually do those studies. You're seeing so many more people being allowed to do it. It's opening up so much, and what people are finding is what we've known all along, right? So many people have already been touting this stuff, and now it's starting to become more widespread. But yeah, Kevin, going back to kind of talking about the on-charge effect that you brought up. So we tend to start with anything with a full spectrum type of product. We usually use our base as full spectrum distillate, and then we'll add in isolated cannabinoids like the CBG and CBN to that. And we really believe we try to keep our products to as close to the legal limit of THC as possible. I firmly believe full spectrum is far more effective than broad spectrum products, which they remediate the THC out of. So we'll try to stay close to that 0.3 limit, so people can really get that added benefit with the THC in there as well.
Right. No, that's good. And going back to what y'all were talking about, and Mac touched on it, where the industry, especially within the industrial hemp side, it's so new that there aren't, and you had touched on it also, Colin, is that there aren't enough processors, right? There are not enough extraction labs to actually get the cannabinoids out of the flower and put them into consumable products, right? This has happened in my home state where I grew up in New Mexico. I know that was a big bottleneck challenge that they had on the industrial hemp side. And I would, guess that that's going to be an issue within Texas, because I think there's like maybe one lab right now. So how are y'all, like, what is your strategy when it comes to that and helping your clients overcome those pain points?
Well, it's inception to consumption, business development. So when you're building your project, you need to have a plan for what that final product is going to be that you're taking to market, right? And with that plan, you can complete the supply chain, and not necessarily having to take on every single vertical at once by yourself. All these big Canadian companies that jumped into full vertical integration that we're now seeing proof in the pudding that it's not the way to do it. It's too much, right? You need to master one vertical before moving to the next. And it goes even a step further, right? We're starting to see CBD distillates drop in pricing and isolates drop in pricing, like Colin was saying, but it's the final product manufacturing, right? So it's the dosing, it's API form dosing, right? Where we're designing those molecules to actually have the ability to intake properly, right? And have the desired effects that are needed. So. And it's not just the United States. We do business in all over the world, and we have about 27 different countries that are in our network right now that we're working with. And they're way behind the United States, way, way, way behind. When I first started traveling as an international consultant, I thought I was completely underqualified, and it just so happens that I had to go out and just speak my mind. And because I've watched the flower grow for 15 years and flowered 1,000 cultivars between Colin and I, just naturally being able to kind of share that education and knowledge with people is mind-blowing to a lot, right? The simple conversation we're having today, which I guarantee a majority of the listeners can at least grasp onto, the majority of the world can't intake it. It's too much, right?
And it's really nice to just be able to bring that enlightenment and be able to really share knowledge that they haven't had the opportunity to get yet, based on whatever that may be that's caused that. But we've just really seen, and still kind of impressed just how far ahead, the US and Canada are. But, all these other emerging markets are really, starting to grasp onto this very quickly. It's spreading very quickly around the globe. I don't know the exact number, anymore of how many countries are online. There's so many now. But especially on the CBD side, you can export CBD virtually anywhere these days. And it's just nice to be able to see it really spreading so people can, get the full benefits of this amazing plant.
Right. What trends, when you say that these 27 countries that are in your network, that they're behind the US, in what ways would you say? Do they all vary, or are there commonalities between these countries?
Well, everyone's in different stages of growth, right, for the most part, but overall, everyone's 10 years behind the United States when it comes to infrastructure and education and knowledge. There are a couple big players that are doing it right in different countries, but for all the SMEs and startup organizations that just have a passion for cannabis and want to get involved, They need the United States and the Canadian professionals to come out and just help them leapfrog the mistakes. I mean, I've done it wrong dozens of times, right?
We absolutely have.
It took dozens of times and multiple infestations and bits and pieces of crop loss here or there to really learn how to do it right. So, the goal is to it's education. It's all about education right now, right? Even getting to the East Coast of the United States, when you go east of the Rockies, trying to sell someone CBG, or it takes an immense amount of education for them to even understand what you're trying to introduce to them, right? Now, I'm not speaking for everyone, but this is just, a majority, I should say.
It is pretty widespread especially when we're selling products. We really we really have to provide a lot of educational materials to really get people to really be willing to try, some of the progressive products that we're putting out there. And it's once they do, though, they come back. They recognize the benefits. They have far better experience than they do with the typical, CBD isolate product that they may have tried or something they bought at Walgreens or something. So it's great to see.
Yeah,
and it's nice to be able to educate.
Of course. Yeah. And I mean, that's before we started recording, that's what we were talking about, is just, what this podcast is about. And it's just really a way to educate and inform the public as to what's going on within every aspect of the industry, So it's great to have you guys on to talk about that kind of stuff. Going back to your consulting. So do you specifically, like when we talk about the cultivation side of it, do you specifically or solely focus on the indoor grows, or do you also consult outdoor grows? And if outdoor, like, do you really, I would imagine, have to understand the climate and the terrain in which you're operating in, right? Because the East Coast is far different than the West Coast. And then I can't even imagine internationally with all the different countries.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. You nailed it on the head there. And Mack and I's background is primarily in indoor cultivation. I mean, I've grown a few plants in my backyard here and there, and helped a couple buddies with some greenhouses. But we have more experience in the more special, completely environmentally controlled spaces. But that's really where a lot of our network comes into play, and how we've set this up. We have so many experts in their fields, from many different locales that we can really pull from. If there's an area where it's something, where it is a climate type of thing, we're really trying to, understand, we can call some others in our network to gain the information for our clients that we need.
Yeah, Kevin, it's risk management, man. It's really what it comes down to. And the entire business plan has to take all of these factors into play, including the cultivation all the way through final product development, right? And that risk management comes for us with indoor facilities, being able to produce, Six Sigma value batch after batch, essentially similar crops over and over and over again, right? And this gives us the ability to implement standard operating procedures, right, that actually hold value and that we know are going to be successful. And doing that outdoors, and controlled greenhouses are obviously becoming bigger and bigger, but become very expensive when done right. And doing it outdoors is a whole new ballgame, right? The ability to produce medicine for the people that doesn't contain pathogens, yeast, molds, bacterias, phytoplasms, all of the above, essentially. That can be harmful is difficult to do outdoors, right? So it's a fine line of kind of playing with Mother Nature, right? And any farmer that has experienced Mother Nature's wrath and lost their crop for the year, and their family has a struggle eating, and kind of learns these values, and you're going to do everything you can for the next season to prevent that from happening. Right. So it all
absolutely, Mac. And that's something that's really cool. We're starting to see that's happening in the industry now. Some people are really getting progressive with the way that they're going about cultivation. And just seeing some of these facilities, a lot of people are building more, indoor / greenhouse facilities, more so just than a light deprivation greenhouse of sorts, but a facility that is actually, sustainable through, efficient practices that uses natural sunlight, but is still completely environmentally controlled. I'll plug one of my good friends here in Boulder. One of the biggest, the best facilities I've seen. It's a new greenhouse, Vera Cultivation, in East Boulder County. They built this place from the ground up. It's pretty incredible what they've done. And it's just really cool to see people kind of, branching out and figuring out new ways to make efficient growth strategies. Because obviously that's one of the biggest problems in this, in indoor cultivation. You're dealing with massive power constraints, and it's hard to really, get the footprint down. So.
Right. I mean, it makes total sense if you can completely control the environment inside, especially when it comes to, taking care of these trichomes and the cannabinoids within the flower and all that. But I would imagine that outdoor grow, like my guess is that the industry on the industrial hemp side is going to lean more toward outdoor growing as opposed to indoor, just because you can basically you're growing that plant for the stock, right, and for the fiber. So you're not having to cure and take care of it and be as diligent as you would if you were growing for consumable products. Would you agree?
You're right on point there, Kevin. Right? I hate the word hemp, honestly, and I hate the way the government has used it as a staple point for legality, because in my personal opinion, the genetic shift and bees alone are gonna, can make your crop hot from cross-pollination. But there's really three categories. There's commercial cannabis, right? And under those three categories, there's medical, there's recreational, and there's industrial, right? Now, medical and recreational and industrial can all be hemp, right? Because we can pull cannabinoids, right? But for medical, you're looking at molecular dynamics. For recreational, we're looking at flower and oil production. And for industrial, we're looking at fiber production, right? Where we want long internodal stretching and tall hemp plants. And that can absolutely be done outdoors, but that plant isn't being ingested by humans, right? It's being used for other purposes. So where the kind of the give and take comes into play is with that recreational medical hemp values and how you're cultivating them. And when you're doing it outdoors, it's very possible, but it comes down to proper genetics, right? Studying the landrace attributes that are prominent in that region to help that plant protect itself. And, Colin's talking about the closed loop dogma greenhouses that are hybrids at this point in time. And the best way that I can think of it is, the cannabis flower it's a beautiful woman stretching for the sky, right? Beautiful colors, beautiful smell, super sticky pistils, right? And its whole goal of life is to attract things to it, right? So when you're in an environment where there's pathogens prevalent that can basically overtake the pathway of existence for that species, you really got to study the science behind the land race attributes, back to land races when it comes to outdoor cultivation, right? And so being able to
this also goes back, Mac, to what we were talking about with all the different climates that people are growing in, and the importance of picking the proper genetics for it, and what goes into the breeding, and the thought process for making strains for those particular areas is just vital, and a lot of people overlook that,
especially growing along the equator, right? I mean, we're getting 6 turns in a year if you're propagating indoors properly and vegging, right? And that gives you a huge advantage financially, right? If you're trying to generate cash flow, you're getting more crops in, obviously. But what a lot of people don't realize is that it's extremely humid on the equator, right? And pythium and bud rot will set in overnight on an entire crop. I've seen it with my own eyes indoors where I'm trying to control the environment, let alone a humid night and wherever it may be along the equator. I don't want to call anyone out here. But it comes down to strong genetics, as any old farmer knows, right? And then a huge issue beyond that is drying and curing that cannabis. I spent 2 years in Central America, and all of the flower I was able to access, unless it came from California, was moldy. Right. And people don't even know they're smoking mold. We've all done it. We've all been smoking mold for years and years.
Sure have.
And until you actually see it with your own eyes, understand what's going on with those spores, you don't even realize it. Right.
And it's extremely painful to see, somebody spends 4 months, 4 months or longer growing the, incredible plant like this. and you can screw up the entire process and turn it into trash, so, you know, in a matter of a week trying to cure it if you don't do it right. And we've seen it way too often. I've done it myself, you know, and luckily I think Mac and I have, you know, gotten past that, really figured out how to do this properly.
So that's the first time I've ever heard that weed could get moldy. And I'm sure that I've ingested moldy weed in my lifetime. So how does that happen? Like what goes on in that process when you do it incorrectly?
It's typically, you know, this is a big problem people have with really big chunky, you know, strains that grow huge. If your, you know, your humidity is a little bit off at the end of your cycle, it can happen while it's still on the plant at the end of the cycle. You can get bud rot through the middle of your buds. And you know, then you start harvesting it and you start cutting them off the stems, and you can see all this brown bud rot in the middle. It's just so painful. But it really comes down to controlling the environment properly. You know, getting it off the plant at the right time, being able to, you know, have the same type of proper drying, you know, climate for it. And then from there, actually, you know, doing a quality control with storage after it's actually cured. A lot of people, you know, they finish the process, they bag it up and forget it, and then it can mold in the bag if you let it sit there too long and there's too much moisture in the center of the buds.
There was a study that just came out in Denver, and I believe they pulled a large sample of off the shelves, and 80% of the flower tested for mold counts, right?
Yeah, it was one of the biggest producers in Colorado, down in southern Colorado, that had to pull most of the stuff off their shelves.
Wow.
What's happening is these spores, they're, you know, the cannabis flower, like I was saying, it reaches for the sky. It's, you know, it's also very porous, like a sponge, so it intakes everything. And these spores can enter into your flower like right before harvest or at harvest. You can go through your drying process, and they can remain benign, and then you get them into a package, and all of a sudden the right moisture level builds up, and your spore count will start to replicate or reproduce, I should say. So by the time it actually you're testing well, it goes into a package, moisture builds in the package. By the time the consumer gets it, you actually have mold counts that are building because of the spores that are inside of that cannabis. So when those spores are plated at a lab, they replicate very, 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 very quickly, right? So
yeah,
it's
and at least now, you know, now in most, you know, legal states, at least in the United States, I'm sure in Canada too, they really have, you know, got their microbial testing on lock. You know, they require tons of testing before it can actually be put on a shelf. You know, Colorado just started doing heavy metal testing at the end of last year. So that's just one more test that every producer has to go through, whether it's a concentrate, flower, anything like that. And so at least they're really, you know, the regulators are doing the right thing, trying to make this, you know, a lot safer for people, which is really good to see.
Cannabis flower is 4 times more stringent when it comes to testing than food alone, right?
Yeah.
So especially for medicine. So it comes down to laboratories too, doing it properly, like Colin's talking about here. The ISO 17025 accreditation, which essentially shows that you are documenting and recording your protocols properly so that the audits can occur to provide validity to your operation. Is another important factor for the cannabis industry to keep moving towards. And while I'm bringing that up, I want to touch on just accreditations in general. Right, that's a huge kind of factor of our organization and what we're helping push. And we have Zach Lockwood, our Director of Regulatory Affairs, helping us kind of really develop these standard operating procedures. But, you know, good manufacturing practices and good distribution practices, along with ISO accreditations for your laboratories, are important. One, because they get higher price points on the back end. Dealing with Australia, for example, a lot of these guys will not take anything that's not coming out of accredited laboratories. But at the same time, it's also, you know, it slowly eats into the black market and the gray market that still exists, which, you know, we all came from. We've all been there and done that, right? But just creating that integrity all the way to the consumer, where we know the testing is being done properly and the product's being sold with good intention, is a really important process. That a lot of people are just now starting to grasp onto, and the United States government is not even really funding the ability for people to get these regulations to their fullest extent yet. There's a lot of work.
And, you know, and then you look at the FDA, you know, with all the edible products and everything, and, you know, they're reluctant to even give any guidance whatsoever on, you know, on even CBD products, which are, you're federally regulated now. And, you know, that's something I think that really needs to happen as soon as possible. There's a lot of stuff out there that people, is being consumed, all these edibles in legal states, everything else. But it is really nice to see, at least, cannabis companies are starting to latch on and start to worry about some of these accreditations and really make sure that they're creating safe, good products. And, a lot of the operators care themselves. So whether the FDA step in or not, it's nice to be able to at least, see people doing the right thing. Because there's a lot of trash out there, as we all know. So.
Yeah, no, it's good that the industry is self-regulating because it's clear that the FDA has been dragging their feet. It's been echoed on this podcast a lot that it's the contradictions of the federal government. It's just hilarious how cannabis is scheduled as a Schedule 1 narcotic, right? Which by definition it doesn't even fit that description because a Schedule 1 narcotic has no medicinal properties to it, right?
And the U.S. government owns the rights to the term medical marijuana. Yet it's still Schedule 1.
Yeah, they own certain patents, and so it's just really ridiculous. And Mac, you touched on. I share the same frustrations with you, man. You talk about I feel we have three different words that we call the plant, right? You got cannabis, which was what it's always been called since the beginning of time. Then you have marijuana, which was kind of a made-up term by the government to stigmatize the plant. And then now we're talking about hemp, which is classified as 0.3 or less THC, but they're all the same thing. It's so...
It's all cannabis. Yeah, it's all cannabis, right? It's all, I'm trying to change the lingo, not change, but educate the lingo as commercial cannabis, right? Hemp can fall under all three of those categories we talked about. It all depends on where that final product is going for consumption or use, right? It's how we should be classifying these plants. And even hemp, I can't remember the researcher science. It was made up by some Canadian scientist years ago. It was just a term he used basically to describe, THC levels that somehow has now become a worldwide staple for describing CBD. And
it's really nice to see certain countries like Switzerland, and I think there's maybe one or two others in the world as well, that are allowing up to a 1% THC level with, as far as regulations go. Because the US with 0.3, and what's really been a problem with, for hemp farmers lately, they're required to destroy all of their plants if it tests hot. There's a pretty small margin of error there. I think if it's like 0.35, 0.4, they can sort of get away with it. But the reality is you can, in a laboratory, you can extract whatever down to under the 0.3%. So it really doesn't make any sense to make farmers throw away all their hard work when you produce a product that can still be made legal in a laboratory.
No, and I heard that the USDA, I don't know how true this is or not, but that they were even considering making it less than 0.3. Yep. I mean, can you imagine the challenges and barriers that you'd have with that? They're barely making the 0.3 mandate,
Yeah, and I mean, at the EU, EU is at 0.2, pretty much the biggest market in the world. And it's something that is causing a lot of exporters from other countries to have serious issues with, when you have, say even Switzerland, they're allowed 1%. They have to create entirely different products to get it into the EU market. Same thing with Canada and the US, and it just causes all kinds of problems for us.
And here's an example of a problem. We have an associate in our network who shipped a legal kilo of distillate to, Madrid, right? Spain.
Yeah, Barcelona, I think. Yep.
Barcelona, and it tested just fine here in the United States. COAs went with it. It got to Barcelona and tested at like 0.05% or something like that. And when they went to pick it up, they were arrested and they're being held with international drug smuggling charges for a liter of CBD grown distillate that tested just fine and is legally, shipped out of the country. So,
and it's most likely just a laboratory testing issue that, now this it's their attorney who picked it up, and now he's the one, facing charges for this when, it's something that in the US was completely tested. It may even be a difference in how they test it in Europe. It's just something along those lines.
How often do you guys come across cases like that? Is that?
Luckily, this is the only one so far, but
yeah.
But it certainly gives me pause. I have some clients in Barcelona that we've been in talks with, and we're about to export some distillate to them, And now I'm a little bit freaking out about, making sure, everything is absolutely perfect. I'm just trying to source liters of distillate that are as low as possible in THC, just so we can't even potentially have this issue,
How would that issue even happen? Like, is it because the technology in the lab in Barcelona is more outdated than what we have in the US? Or is it like, how would they be off like that in that number?
That's what I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We believe that. And, this kind of touches on a little bit of the Novel Foods Act that we've been studying in Europe that's taking place. And Colin knows more about this than I do. But essentially, it's coming down to the point where they want you to isolate all your molecules and then reintegrate them in a steady, consistent fashion, right? Six Sigma, batch after batch after batch is exactly the same. And it will prevent things like this from even happening. Now, it's hard for those to grasp.
And that's all good and well, but it makes it pretty complicated when it's the European Commission making these rules, but then the member countries are the ones who are responsible for policing them. So it's a whole landscape where, it's different in every country. You can't really be sure, what's going to be happening when you try to, import product into that country. And, as Max touching those novel food regulations, a general overview of that. They've had these laws in place for a while. The idea is that any foods product that it was not widely consumed before 1997, they can classify it as a novel food, which is, it's a way to protect the citizens, I suppose. But in early 2019, I believe, that's when they added CBD essentially as an ingredient, as a novel food. So now any product that you have to, that you're trying to sell in Europe, if it's going to be going into a food product, you have to go through this, year or two application process that generally costs somewhere between 300 and 400,000 euros to get one product certified. And you have to do it for each product that you sell. So it creates this barrier to entry for any small player. And, they, so far since they did this in early 2019, they've only had 50 applications or so. None of them have actually been fully approved yet. And now I just actually saw an article a few days ago talking about it. And now the European Commission is considering actually classifying CBD as a narcotic, and it would throw away all the progress that they've made. So we'll see how that goes. I don't know.
So they're taking basically like the schedule route that the U.S. federal government did, but they're targeting the cannabinoid CBD now.
Yep, correct.
Wow. That's so crazy.
And there's been so much progress over the last 5 years for, CBD and other cannabinoids in the EU. And now, European Commission is really throwing a wrench in the whole plan, screwing up the entire business model of many operators. And it's pretty sad to see. Let's hope that they get it together here and, start to listen to some logic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you guys have a pulse on the global landscape pretty much, right? Of kind of what's happening in different countries and where they're at with regulations. And so where do you see the future of commercial cannabis? Maybe speak specifically to the US if it's too hard from a global standpoint, but where do you see, this industry in maybe 5-7 years?
CBD will be a commodity here within the next year or two, if maybe 5 at the most, right? Super cheap. I mean, you can already buy it from your gas station at dirt cheap prices, right? And it's only going to continue to drop as more producers come online. I believe the amount of licensed hemp producers jumped 20% this year, going into this year's crop. So we're going to even see more of an overflow of biomass come off the field going into this winter, which is going to be interesting to see the price points and how they fluctuate. Because again, Colin knows better than I do, being there in Denver where the heart of all of this action is happening, and seeing these price points move. But from my perspective, before I pass it to the fellas here, the industry as a whole is going to keep moving forward. You can't stop it. There's too many jobs, right? There's too many uses for the cannabis plant. And it's going to come online one at a time, one by one, right? And it really comes down to your ability to execute and get that product to market, right? And we've talked a lot about the offtakes here, right? And what it really takes to get your product to market. And I would love, Trapper to get the opportunity to kind of talk about the intake to market and how we even should get these projects funded. But it comes down to having a team and a game plan and a business plan, and with proven data-driven results, right? And being able to take those from field to field or from operation to operation is what's going to create a successful cannabis ecosystem of everyone working together, right? And not at one entity trying to tackle complete vertical integration, but everyone taking their fair share, becoming experts at their vertical, and then completing a supply chain, doing with good business practices and ethics. That's what it's going to take to get there.
Makes sense. Trapper, do you want to talk about, your perspective when it comes to raising money in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, man. Thanks, Kevin. You can kind of see how comfortable I am kind of passing off to these guys when it comes down to the science and the information and the knowledge and the passion about the industry, right? So, I bring in my personal network of private equity investors to take a look at these projects that we're working on and sourcing, and whether that be as operators or fundraisers or whatever void we may fill in that supply chain for each specific company. I'm confident in their ability to vet these projects for my investors. Taking a step back, looking at the global economy from a macro level, I mean, everyone has to take into account what's happening with COVID. There's no, going around it. You have to go through it and you have to deal with it. We look back at 2019 and we see a cannabis market that kind of bottomed out. There's a lot of negative press, negative business dealings. A lot went wrong with the big guys. And there's a lot of room to improve and go up, man. I mean, we're looking at COVID, and it's an excellent opportunity for both local and federal governments to deregulate. I mean, everyone's kind of talking about it. If you're looking for a stimulus to add jobs and consumers are steady, it's almost one of those recession-proof type industries where we saw a boom in sales. Colin was dealing with that in Colorado at the start of the outbreak, at the start of the lockdown.
It was astonishing.
Yeah, so I see tremendous opportunity. I mean, you see countries like Argentina recently deregulated a little bit with a law reversal or a relaxation, if you will. So, from my perspective, I'm super confident, especially with these guys by my side, predicting a lot of money going into it with the help of governments rather than, what Colin was saying with the EU, that's backwards thinking at this point. It's 2020 and moving on. So I love it, man. And, I'm happy that I transitioned into the industry. I'm just having a blast with these guys.
And hey, give some of your investors, opportunity to invest in something cool and new that has explosive growth potential.
Smart. Yeah, it makes me look smart, so I enjoy
it.
Diverse portfolios, right?
Yeah, and it's incredible how quickly Trap has picked up on this whole thing and really got up to speed with us over a period of a short few months. And we're just stoked to have him on the team, and he brings so much value to what we're doing. And it really has helped a lot of people that we've already been in contact with for years. Just having him give their his input on their project and how to get it ready for investors. We were joking the other day, it wasn't really our intention, but we have so many projects that people are throwing at us. It's almost like we have all these pitch decks in front of us. It's almost like we've become a cannabis hedge fund, which is not at all our intention.
Looking for help. I mean, we talked about it. This industry is so new, and if you have expertise and knowledge on the horticulture side, the indoor grow side, and then especially if you understand the science behind the endocannabinoids and talking about the molecular dynamics that Mack touched on as it affects our endocannabinoid receptors. There's so much, and if you can add that value to your customers that don't have that expertise and knowledge, that's huge, and you guys are
absolutely. And also being able to bring the financial knowledge that they may not have. It's something that I think it kind of makes logical sense, but in this industry, coming from where it did, a decade ago, a lot of the operators really don't have any experience with that. So, being able to help them get their projects to a point where it's ready to pitch to an investor is something that we've really been enjoying, and something that you know, we've seen as a great need within the industry.
Yeah, man. And you look at these well-conceived projects, a lot of which, you know, we're vetting and working with, you know, and progressing ourselves. You're seeing a lot of smart people in the industry with now a lot of experience. A lot of people, like you guys say, have done it wrong multiple times. You know, those are the people you kind of really want to be, you know, kind of in business with there. But it legitimizes the whole operation. Having that knowledge and that passion and that experience now, so that when you pass it off to someone that might not have industry experience but wants to get into it from a financial standpoint, you know, the bridge is set. You know, the bridge is built. It's not a leap of faith anymore. There's certainly legitimacy to it, and it's exciting. I know I see tremendous potential with it. It's great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I've had a few attorneys on that have echoed what you're saying, Trapper, and that's like, they've been IP or copyright attorneys for 20, 30 plus years, right? But being in California, they saw that adult use was now legal, and so they made that pivot. That the bridge was already established, you know, and now some of them are doing it exclusively. So to your point, it's only going to be more legitimized. The credibility and the public support every day is growing. And it's just a matter of time, basically, before either the federal government makes the move or these states take it upon themselves to become legal.
And, you know, it'll be really cool too to see the social consumption open up. That's a whole new thing. Those laws just passed in Colorado, just kind of went into effect in January, right before COVID hit. So nobody's really, you know, gotten off the ground too much. I think there's one in Denver. It's actually like a members only social consumption lounge, but that's going to be a whole other ball game, and kind of, you know, take on the whole coffee shop type model out of Amsterdam.
Yes, I've been to Amsterdam, one of those coffee shops, and it is awesome. So
it is, isn't it?
incredible. So it's like I always explain Amsterdam is like Disneyland. It's like Disney World. You've got, you know, it's a bike friendly city. You're riding over canals. You stop off with your bike. You sit down for a cup of coffee and a joint, you know, in the morning, and then you head on to Vondel Park. I mean, it's incredible. Everybody's so nice there. It's beautiful. Yeah. So one day the U.S. is going to look that way, and I look forward to that day. I'm hopeful.
Not to digress a little bit, but I want to give a shout out to Lenny Kerman, our director of business development. Him and Trapper have been doing a really good job at preparing a lot of these businesses for showtime, I guess is the best way to put it, where we're getting their pitch decks, we're getting all the due diligence done and checked off, so that when we go to these big money guys who are anxious, as the way Trapper likes to put it, looking for new types of investments, especially with the way the market's run with COVID, getting them ready for that takes a lot of time and effort and knowledge and just basic, you know, structure. And that's something that I'm still learning every single day, and I feel blessed to have these guys by my side helping, right? But there's so many different varieties of people trying to enter the industry with different ideas. And a lot of them have come from the black market, or a lot of them are just have a passion and want to start something new, right? But really don't have any clue how to build a real business structure. These guys have done amazing work with that. I'm like overwhelmingly impressed with their ability to educate others on how to get ready for showtime, which is another void in the industry that needs filling. We still need others doing it, right? The underground cannabis grower does not know how to put together a multi-million-dollar pitch deck for you know, whoever it may be, at least not all of them, majority of them, because they've never had to do it before in their life, right? I was one of them at one point in time, right? So it's that's a huge factor. Again, it's input, throughput, and output to market, and really focusing on where we can, you know, accelerate those areas and leapfrog mistakes to basically help the industry overall. And of course, on the back end, there is sustainable farming practices, right, and green energy, and that's expensive stuff to get into right off the bat, and no one can afford it when they're trying to launch a cannabis operation. And so that is a whole new topic of study that is coming online, and building these organizations to a point where they can actually afford sustainable farming practices to kind of help the ecosystem in general is crucial. It's extremely important for everyone.
It is, and I would love to see some state or federal governments in various countries really start to jump in and try help to supplement this. Being in Boulder, Colorado, this is something I'm used to. I mean, obviously, it's a pretty progressive landscape here, and the state of Colorado and even the city itself will give various tax credits and whatnot. You can pretty much get a solar system funded entirely with government money, but it would be great to see that for some businesses within the space. Something Colorado did, which was cool, but it didn't really have that much of an impact. Was that they started mandating cultivators to purchase wind energy credits, a certain percentage of them from for your facility. That's great and all, but it doesn't actually lower the power consumption. Make some of it a little more sustainable. But it would be great to see some of these facilities be able to use solar more to really help offset the costs and make it more sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only when it comes to the future of energy efficiency, like you're talking about, solar, wind, but I mean, even like I've read, that some cannabis businesses aren't even able to write off tax deductions. Like, in California, for instance.
It's terrible, man.
I mean, that's you're not playing at the same level at that point. You know what I mean? You're as a business owner, you're having to deal with outside challenges that are out of your control that even make it hard to even start and get off the ground. We need to reverse engineer that process as well and make it
absolutely
attainable for everybody to do this, because like Mac and all of you have touched on, is that there's a lot of opportunity, both economically, medicinally. I mean, there's a lot of impacts that this plant can make, and I'm just going to start calling it cannabis from now on, just to stop, out of everybody. But
it's all cannabis now.
Yes. So, anything else you guys want to say or add before we sign off? We've touched on a lot of great topics today. But what do we want to leave the audience with?
I just want to thank you, Kevin. I mean, the work that you're doing is extremely important to the industry as a whole. Like the ability to give, individuals like us the ability to speak our mind, but to educate those that are trying to get into the industry and learn is number one right now. In so many different areas, in every single vertical, being able to understand how it needs to be done to be successful is important. And so I appreciate you for kind of opening those doors. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. We appreciate the opportunity to be on here. One thing I'd like to, leave with is, the federal government needs to get it together. Take our tax money, we know how much money you can make in the state of Colorado. We wiped out our entire deficit pretty much by selling weed to the to the citizens. So get it together, take our money, legalize it.
Yeah. It's one of those things, the U.S. isn't, as we see, it's not immune to this virus. If we want, stay propelled and project accordingly, we have to be one of the, governments that deregulate and kind of help the industry along rather than block it for reasons unbeknownst to ourselves. So, I too want to thank you, Kevin. I've had a lot of fun, and what you're doing is excellent work. So thank you, man.
Hey, well, I really appreciate the kind words, guys. I'll tell you the reason that really kind of pushed me to start this was I went with also a cultivator, horticulture consultant. His name is Manny Fresh Ordaz. He's in New Mexico, and he's a pretty big name in New Mexico, and he's expanding to. So shout out to Manny. But he's the one who actually got me interested. I went to the Texas hemp convention back in January before COVID hit. And I just remember walking through that convention and just learning so much, but then also like trying to figure out, where do I fit into this industry? I'm not a farmer. I don't have tons of capital to open up a lab or, that kind of stuff. But I do have a digital marketing background and a journalism background. So, like you said, it's all about education and informing, and having guests on like yourselves who know a lot about what you're doing. I don't act like I know everything, and I'm doing this podcast to learn and meet great people like you guys in the industry. So I really appreciate the time. And yeah, where can people find you guys online, like your social medias, websites? You guys go ahead and plug that so people can find you.
Yeah, thanks, man. We're actually launching our website today, fellas. So it's been a month in the making, and we're super proud of it. It's HeadieHorticulture.com, HEADIE horticulture.com. Our Instagram is HH Global Alliance, which is actually the government name of our entity. And we also have Headie.horticulture on Instagram.
And just a quick note with these, I mean, we're startup here. We've been at it a few months. We don't have a whole lot of content yet on our social media, but that's going to start coming. Part of our marketing strategy is really expanding that over the next couple months here. The website gives a really good understanding of who we are, what we do, the types of services we offer. So we're really excited to get that launched, have a place to send people to be able to learn more about us.
Nice. Well, go ahead.
I'll just say there's LinkedIn too, right? And then TikTok. I don't know, my kid brother is into TikTok's coming on hot. I've seen a monkey out there with like 8 million views. I mean, I can't stop watching the monkey. I understand why. But we would like to start kind of doing educational, segments there too, to just kind of help teach what we're learning every day, because we're learning every single day, which is a lot of fun.
And our LinkedIn also, right? Our LinkedIn is Headie Horticulture, correct, Mac?
Yeah.
Well, I'll be sure to put all the links to your social and your website in the description of the YouTube video. I can't wait to see the TikTok dance videos when you're educating when it comes to horticulture, international cannabis. So that's going to be hilarious. And shameless plug, if you guys are in need of a social media marketing agency, I own one. So
how about that?
Yeah,
we'll have a conversation.
See, shameless plug, Casey Consulting.
Excellent.
Hey guys, well, I really appreciate your time, and I want to thank everybody for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time, right?
Hey Kevin, we had a blast. We're happy to come on anytime, man.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Appreciate it, man.
Much love.
Much love.